Hi there, and welcome to What is Tabletop? My name is Frank. No, that's not right. What is this? Where are we right now?
I think my name is Frank, actually.
Yes,
You can be
must
Charles. You got the
I can
glasses
be.
for it.
No, I could never be Charles. I aspire to be Charles.
Oh, he will find that comment very endearing. So
This is a crazy experience for me, but we got Frank from What is Tabletop. I'm sure basically everyone watching already knows that already, but this is our first kind of collab style chat. We wanted to talk about a couple subjects, and you'll see some stuff on their channel as well. So, my game, Blue Shiners, I'm developing with my co-designer, Matt. And of course, you guys are also developing your game together as well. And so we wanted to talk about that sort of experience of what is it like to design a game with two people? How do you navigate like differences of opinion and like differences of design goals and all of those things? And what are the benefits also? Because like, let me tell you, as somebody who has a hard time self-motivating, like it makes a huge difference.
Oh yeah. Arguably part of the reason we still have a YouTube channel is because I have a Charles. I have tried to do YouTube stuff in the past, and usually I last 5 weeks, don't get the results I want, and then dip out. And so having someone who's like, when's the next time we're recording, does help. So yeah, I'm sure it's the same with design of like, hey, I came up with this crazy thing. We got to figure it out. It's like, okay, yeah, we do. We got to figure it out.
Typically the sort of format is, Matt is the more kind of, steady, consistent output guy. And I am the like, go silent for 2 weeks and then have like a total brainwave. And I'm like, okay, I have 1,000 ideas. Let me tell you about all of them, guy.
Yeah, that's Charles. 100%. What's interesting is I don't just have a co-partner in Charles for the RPG. We're producing. We'll explain that as we keep talking. I also have another team that I do board game and card game design with. And there's 3 of us in that. And so I get to have a cool perspective of talking about the benefits of all of that. Because I understand for a lot of people having a singular vision is all that's necessary. But I think you kind of you can do a disservice, because as the nature of role-playing games is, you learn that when we tell a story together, it's much better than whatever story we had in our head. So I think even the design process can be like that for sure.
Oh yeah. That's absolutely been my experience. And in fact, when I was first starting my game 8 years ago, it was just me for the first couple of years. It was very much the story that we tell in one of the videos is like, I got stuck at a point. Like I'd done a couple like early play tests and was kind of like, here's what I want to do. And it was, much more kind of, D&D SRD thing, but we needed this like list of spells, basically like all of the, what's the magic going to be and how's it going to work. And I did one subset and burned out. And I was feeling stuck, and I finally asked Matt, like, hey, like, can you help out with this? And turns out that's like his whole deal. Like he loves that stuff, like just making cool features and powers and spells or whatever. Like he will design specific features for days and days and never get bored of it. And it makes a huge difference in terms of like momentum and like sharing that workload.
Yeah, because here's the thing. The things that I don't like, Charles does like, and vice versa. I love coming up with rules, tweaking them to make them work, even coming down to writing the minutia of a rule, because wording it in one way is different than wording it in another way, even though arguably the core understanding is the same, the wording is different. But when it comes to, all right, and now write out a paragraph explaining what you're going to, I'm like, nah, I'm out. And that's Charles's job. So it's works a little bit better of like having that stream of conscious. And also Charles really enjoys the world building aspect. And because he has this idea of like, oh, this is the world that we can work with, that helps me to then be like, okay, I can start thinking of mechanics that go alongside that, rather than starting with a mechanical structure and being like, okay, we have this cool mechanic, but like, how do we make it fit into the thing we're making?
That's always the toughest thing for me, especially recently when I've had this sort of influx of like new opinions and new voices and new things to consider, is like, oh, this is a lot of really cool stuff. How much of it fits in, how much of it is worth trying to find a version that fits in the game versus like, that's great, save it for a rainy day, save it for another game or whatever. Yeah. How do you guys navigate that? Like, we have all of these cool ideas from whichever side, whether it's the rules side or the world building or whatever. How do you navigate, like, I like your idea and I don't think it fits, or the opposite, like that fits perfectly, but I don't know if that's going to be fun. Like, how do you sort of negotiate those differences?
Well, we're still early enough in Scream Punk. That's the one we're doing together, where like a lot of the stuff is still more fluid. Nothing's necessarily structured down. I think going into it ahead of time saying like, we'll have ideas and we have to be okay with having those ideas and then throwing them out. And it does help quite a bit. We know what we both enjoy in RPGs. We both enjoy player choice and autonomy. We both enjoy more narrative aspects and the free-flowing nature that comes from that. And so kind of going back to what the core of the game is usually how that works. So like Charles, he will obsess over one thing, come up with it, write it down, and be like, here's the 50 ideas I have. And I remember one time he gave me like a list for feats. And I'm like, this is great. We do not have a core game yet. Right.
It's I love that though. Yeah.
Well, like the feats are awesome, but it's like, I don't know if any of these feats will work in the way you want. Cause it's like one of the feats was like gives a +1 in a certain circumstance. And I'm like, is that what we want? Does that work? Would that be valuable? I don't know, because we don't know what the core of the game is. So tends to be the one to like wrangle things back in, like no, let's work on this. He's like, I have an idea for a magic system. We can do this and this and this, and then we'll have like a conversation back and forth. I'm like, that's really cool. Can we wait? Can we have like this be a supplement? Because it feels like what we're already wanting to do, tacking that on top of it is more. I think if you're going to add a new subsystem, that's something to think about, like saving it for later. Because the more subsystems you add on, the more of a workload and more of a cognitive understanding you're forcing the players to have to learn the first time they play it. Versus if it's a supplement, then it's people who've already played your game being like, oh, okay, I see how this adds on top of it. That's kind of what we look at, is like, okay, is the thing we're bringing into this something that's going to radically shift what we're already doing? Let's probably put that to the back burner. Can it enhance? Sure. We can work on that and see how that goes. Yeah. And then again, I have more design experience than Charles, because I was designing a bunch of D&D stuff when I was playing 5th edition for the longest time. I came up with my own subclasses, all that stuff. I learned the difficulty that is having an idea in your head and then putting it to paper, and then someone being like, and this is what I do. And you're like, oh no.
Yeah. The biggest design regrets in terms of making, I'll tell you mine immediately. I don't even have to think about it. We had a spell in the sort of like, we had, physical aspect of our magic system that was constructs was the like overall thing. And then this specific one was, you can perfectly recreate a functioning version of a thing, but you have to know exactly how it works down to the minute details. So like that felt, at least in concept, like the right amount of balance, that if your character knew the thing. And what our game turned into was, maybe it's just coincidence, but my chaotic everywhere player was like, anytime a social negotiation was not going the way he wanted, he would just be like, I build a bomb. I make a bomb.
I read the Alchemist Cookbook. I know what I'm doing.
And I was like, and I kept asking him, like, do you know how to, like, we can work through the like details of, does this make sense for you? But he never had a reason why that should work, just that he wanted to build a bomb.
Right.
And he wanted it to be there. And he wanted to be able to just walk into a room and just like threaten everyone immediately. I'm like, this is, and it's gone now. Like, right. I couldn't figure out a way to make that work and also not have it feel dissatisfying.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of stuff is crazy. I love when people design something expecting it to work one way, and then a player's like, oh, but actually it's more broken if you do this entirely different thing. And like, that's true regardless of what medium you're doing. Anytime there's a game involved and there's a rule, I'm going to get really weird and nerdy for a second. I mean, we're already nerdy. So this season of Big Brother, there's something like that happened, where there was a power that was given, and it was just meant to be like, here's 5K, you have to do this thing I asked. That's it. It's like, okay, cool, it's a contractual deal. But like, you can phrase it in such a way where let's say hypothetically you're like, hey, I will give you this money if you do not target me next time you have the chance to, comma, also I won't put you up. And it's like, okay, the first part is considered the deal. The second part is not, but because the comma is implied, the whole thing could be misconstrued. And I'm like, yep, that's broken. Good job.
Yeah. Do you find that players, just like in the playtesting context, do you find that players are likelier to break the game on a systemic level? Like, oh, we found a flaw in the loop or the resources or whatever that like I can exploit it here? Or is it more along the lines of like the way that you've thematically inspired or flavored this effect or feature, like the fiction level? Like at what level does that tend to happen?
It depends on the kind of player it is, I'm going to be honest, because there will be the people who will never do an optimal thing because it's what their character would do. And those people are great, and I want them to play test my game because I want to know if that still works. Can the fiction that we're creating still work in someone else's imagination? Does it still capture that? But you definitely need the min-maxers to be like, yeah, I put 2 and 2 together and got 7. Now, I do think to some extent, there's just people out there. I knew a guy when I played board games. He was just always like, what is the most optimal play? Like he could just somehow figure it out. And so I think you're always going to have that. To me, when it comes to playtesting in that regard and balancing, there's 2 kinds of broken. There's the kind that's like, you know what, that was actually kind of cool what you did. Where it's like, I didn't think about how like you could, by combining the grappler feat and the throwing feat, you could now throw yourself. But it's kind of cool. And maybe I keep that versus the, oh, hey, every time I do this action, it gives me advantage to do this action. And thus I can always, like that is broken if it's too easy to exploit. So the hope is you actually want people to find those interactions more so, because those are the key cycle, the key like gaming loop that you want to make sure doesn't get exploited too easily.
Yeah, because that then just affects everything else at that point, right, if it's like a systemic thing.
Yeah, and again, going back to the main topic of like having a co-designer or 3 co-designers, you have people who can just they're distant enough where they can say, actually, wouldn't that be broken in this scenario? Because I found with the group of 3 I found like one of us will make a card for our card game. And it's like, this is how it is. And in your head, you're like, this is how it should function. And I worded it this way. And then one of us who has never interacted with that card will pick it up and go, what about this? And it's like, oh, yeah, that is bad. Which is, again, the beauty of having a co-designer is being able to be like, I have worded it this way. And then to look and say, I don't understand, or, hey, did you realize that this is easily exploited? There is beauty in how that works for sure.
The greatest like weight lifted off of me in the entirety of the game design process is if I come up with, either like a subsystem or an idea for the core mechanic or a tweak or anything, that it's exactly that. It's that Matt he has such a borderline like encyclopedic memory, like almost photographic memory for the game and the rules as they currently are. And like, oh, we designed this one feature that we haven't thought about in like 7 months, but that would be broken under this. He can remember that stuff. I can't do that. Like it would be such a mess. And I would be relying on playtesters to catch those things for me, because as hard as I try, my memory doesn't work that way. Like I don't retain like entire, blocks of information. I retain like specifics that I've interacted with, if I've used it or whatever. And I can keep a systemic design in my head. That's where I tend to think more on, on the big picture scale. Like, how can we create the overarching system that creates the themes and feelings we're going for? And then oftentimes he's then filling in like, oh, I can go in here and create this power that goes into this, and you can create a loop there. And like those differences are key because it keeps us honest.
Yeah, if you have complementary designers, it's great because, like you said, they fill in the gaps. What can be tough is when you have people who are in the same headspace, and then we get to that awkward moment of, I want to do this, I want to do this. Oh no. We've had that happen a few times in creating board games and card games in my group of three. The nice thing is, because we're an odd number, one of us can have an idea, one of us can say, I don't want to do it that way. And then we look to the third, and the third can be like, I'm persuaded by person B. And it's like, all right, person A, you gotta deal with that. And we've actually had that happen enough times to all of us that none of us feel hurt whenever it does happen, which is good. So like one person can come in with a card and I can be like, I don't like what you did there. I don't like the way it works. Maybe it's something we can look into later, but it doesn't fit with this set thematically or whatever reason. The other person can say, I do think it fits thematically. Here are my reasons as to why. And then we could turn to the third person. They could say, I think for the sake of simplicity, we will go here. Or I think for the sake of thematics, we'll go with this thing. That's great. But you can't always have an odd number of designers. With Screenpunk, the way we do it is I say it a lot. This is Charles's game because he's the one coming up with all the ideas. I am here as his lead designer, right? So it's almost like it's not a 1v1. It's Charles makes the final decision, but I can submit for his approval ideas. So if he's like, I really like how Daggerheart does hit points, right? Where you can have thresholds, so you can do big damage, but then you can also only do small hit points. I can then submit and being like, cool, do we want to do a big damage? We're doing a dice curve system for our main resolution. Do we really want to do that? Maybe we just have it be hit points. Maybe we're okay with it. And then because we're doing it on a curve where it's a fixed success and failure rate, we can have it be we can play with that as more of an interesting thing. Like maybe there's a weapon that even when you failed, it deals damage, but it also deals damage to you. And then he's like, actually, those are some cool ideas. Let's go with that. Right.
Nice.
So that's kind of how we handle it, is by allowing there to be a hierarchy. What's tough is if you are not willing to allow one of you to basically be a little bit lower in the pecking order, which I think for the sake of the game, like humble yourself a little bit. Great example, again, going back to MCDM, Matt was the game director for Draw Steel. James Incarnasso was the lead designer. Mm-hmm. And James was like, yeah, I will lead design, but Matt has the final vision. And then that allowed James to eventually have his own RPG where he's the creative lead on it and everyone else leads back to him. So
yeah, that, and I love that flip too, and the way that they think about that because he's Crows is like his game, and Matt's very clear on that. He's like that, he lead designed Draw Steel and did a brilliant job, and this is his chance to sort of have his vision and project go in the forefront. And I think that it's essentially compromise. It's not it's not a groundbreaking concept, but it is really important because, as an example, like, so the setting for Blue Shiners, that world, it's been something that's been with me for 10 plus years now. Like, it was very much my setting, and I sort of started the process, and then Matt came in at a point, and so we've been doing it together. And so I sort of have that hierarchy of like, yeah, on some level I could pull rank if I really wanted to, but I trust his instincts. And if for whatever reason I've pitched something that he is really digging his heels in on, which is rare, but it does happen where, if I'm trying to suggest something that's a little too crazy or whatever, it really does actually, like, it requires you kind of check your ego a little bit. Like, you have to sort of go, maybe I am wrong here. And then think about it and just look at it with a more objective view, knowing that sort of pumping the brakes moment, he's not doing that out of, spite or because he hates your idea or because of anything personal. It's just, he's not sure if this is the right decision. Can you please really double, triple check it? Like, make sure that this is really the way you want to go. And more often than not, I will come back with, okay, you were right about that. Or, hey, here's a compromise. Here's somewhere in the middle that I think would solve, your issues with that. And I think that takes just like a little bit of intentionality. Like, you have to, especially if you're really excited about them, because we've all had that. Like, you think of something that it would be so cool to be able to do things this way. And like, I would love to be able to try, then you have, take it off. And especially if you've have enough time to think about it and like really work that into your, like, I can see all the different places it can connect to. And like, if you bring too much of that into the initial conversation, I have run into this many times. it can be very overwhelming for someone to like absorb. And
Right.
so like I've had several calls with Matt where it's like me pitching something, and it will be, it's, initially it was like just all of my thoughts, and I'm like, okay, that was probably too much. Let me dial it back.
Yeah.
And then now I've gotten to a point of starting with, here's what I think is working incredibly well about this and what I do not want to change. Here's what I think is an issue and why.
Mhm.
And now we're going to talk about what I think is a solution to that thing.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a random, hey, I'm going to throw more like, fuel on the fire and see what happens. Like it has a degree of respect associated, because I respect his time and I respect his like input, and I want him to be able to
Right.
respond to it without being like overloaded.
Yeah, for sure. I agree on that. And I think actually that feeds back into, I guess in some ways it's a positive, but it can also be a negative of having a co-designer of that time. Like, because you're not able to constantly, you can work on it on your own, but because you have to go back to somebody, if you're not meeting on a regular basis, it can be really tough. So like part of the reason we put so much halt on Screen Punk is because Charles got a new job and had to function around that. Then his wife got a new job, and then he was losing his job, so he had to get another job.
Oh my
Right?
God.
Yeah. I mean, he's good now. We're good. We're fine. He's fine. He's okay, everybody. But it means he's not working from home anymore, which changes a lot of things. And again, school just started back up, so he's got to take care of the kids, and life happens. And so if you're not willing to figure out to some extent what that time is, you can be surprised how much time can go by before you're like, oh wait, that's right, we're making a game, and the last time we worked on this was 18 months ago.
Yeah, and you just got like, so that's gonna happen. Like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Right. I definitely know the feeling of you have some kind of brainwave and you just want to be able to like go, and I think I will have wasted a lot of my time and effort without having someone sort of check it first. And there's value in that, but yeah, definitely like communicate, make sure that you can have either have those regular meetings or talk about the fact that for the next 3 months when maybe we won't have that.
And here's the thing too, I think most people don't realize a good chunk of these designers who are designing a game read the credits, because you're going to be like, wow, they're doing it all on their own. Most of them are not. They have some people behind them that are actually contributing to some extent too. I like Peter, for example, from Tales from Elsewhere. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's Peter's game. That's Peter's game," and I'm like, "But Daniel also helped. Daniel contributed a lot." And Peter would be the first to tell you that Daniel also contributed a lot. I mean, I even contributed a monster design in
Cool.
Clock World, which is cool. When that comes out, I'm gonna tell everybody about it. I've already been telling a lot of people about it, but I'll tell everybody about it.
Nice.
But like that's the beauty of that kind of things. You want to be able to have more collaboration, but most of these people, it's not just them. Like there might be, again, as we said, a hierarchy of like this person's the one who's making the final decisions, who's putting in maybe like more work than everyone else, but a good chunk of the time it's a team at the very least that's putting it together.
Yeah. So we do have a sort of a second half to this topic, but before we get to that, I'm just curious on a very specific level. Is there any favorite mechanic of yours that you guys have designed together that was like very much a sort of a co-production? Like what was sort of the best result on a specific level of your working together?
Yeah, I think it's actually how we do our main resolution mechanic, which I really enjoy. So I asked Charles, because fun fact, most of the videos we make are me explaining a concept to Charles for the first time, both like genuinely on camera, but also for the sake of designing game stuff. So I'll be like, we did a whole video on like how different dice mechanics work and stuff like that, because Charles had to figure out what the dice mechanic was that he wanted for the game. And he likes step dice of like having, or at least having different dice that you can roll throughout. So like kind of how Fabula Ultima does it, where you like each stat has a different die and that can create unique dice curves, which is very interesting. I think there's actually a live stream you can watch. So if you're a Patreon or YouTube member, you can watch one of our previous live streams. And then we have a condensed version where we talk about it. Of Charles wanted to do a dice curve, and he wanted to do multiple different dice. And so then I had to ask him, I'm like, well, then what is the average? And he's like, well, we could do the math. I'm like, no. tell me, what do you feel is the average? He's like, 2d8, I guess. I'm like, cool. From there, we can figure everything else out. And so we were able to figure it out. We figured out that we wanted to have it be like, pick a stat and then pick a skill or an action associated with it. And that's how you get your dice curve. Because we both really enjoy game, like, sure, you can, athletics is always strength. But what happens if athletics is sometimes dexterity somehow, right? If you can justify it, if the player is able to say how somehow they use their charisma to be athletic, we're not going to limit them on that, because if you're able to do that, that's awesome. You should be rewarded. We wanted there to be a good variety of like, I can talk you down with my words, and that's equally as viable as someone punching you to death. And so how do we make that system work? So I think that's why I would say that that's been a fun back and forth of figuring that mechanic out.
Nice.
Anyway, explain, how would you charismatically athletic your way out of something?
I was just thinking that through. I was like, what would, and I feel like if you go the like, you know, the classic example of the barbarian rolling stealth, but using intimidation instead. And then it's just like, who did you see? No one. And it's just like, you know, I feel like it would be very that. It would be very like, you do something that is so endearingly clumsy that has nothing to do with being very physically fit or capable, but you do it in a way that's so entertaining that it's still kind of fun to watch. And people are like, oh, wow. Like, wow, I've never seen that technique before. And it's like, oh yeah, totally technique. Nailed it.
I would argue it's Baywatch.
Enough said. Perfect answer. Slow motion and everything.
Right. Because it's like, it's a mundane thing that is athletic, but because of your charisma, you're like, that's so cool.
Nice. Yeah.
That would be my argument.
Nailed it. So the other kind of half I wanted to talk about, just because we were getting into like, okay, well, co-designers and designing specific mechanics. And it's like, well, what's the next like level of that? And I think there's always a conversation when you have multiple people in a creative process. You know, as a filmmaker, I've had hundreds and hundreds of creative conversations with people, game design similar, and it's always going to feel a little bit different depending on who you're talking to. And I like the idea on a design level of starting with a fantasy of some type, whether it's for a very specific like move, like a cloak and dagger kind of, you know, stab someone in the back move, or just for the whole game on a very, very like, you know, macro level. Like, what do you want the fantasy to feel like? And then designing from there, like actually bringing specific mechanical ideas. Right. How do you use like inspirations of some type, whether it's a fantasy or something else, to like inspire your designs? Like, or do you?
So, I mean, not to contradict ourselves, we do have a video called "If You're Making an RPG, Start Here," and it's talking about main resolution mechanics being the first place you'd start. So, no, I mean, ultimately you can start wherever you want. I think some people have the idea of what they want, and that's awesome. To me, it is more about, I mean, like we started again with just resolution mechanic, but Charles had the idea of like, I want some sort of, you know, kind of pseudo like how Vampire does it, where like these things exist in the real world, but maybe it's more obvious, maybe it's not, kind of that vibe. And I do think you should have an understanding of what that theme is and what the feel of that game is, right? So we're doing horror, but we're doing action horror. So that means like death should be on the table, but not as easy or as frequent as other games like 10 Candles or Dread, where it's like 10 Candles, everyone's dying. You're not making it out there alive. And so it's more about like, how do you spend those last moments, right? Versus our game, where it might be more like, sometimes you're the Men in Black and you're trying to stop the evil people. And so it's a little more action in that regard. Sometimes you're a bunch of humans who are canonically the weakest, like species. We're going to literally bake that into the game. Like if you play a human, you are weaker than everyone else. And have that be its own kind of thing of like, well, now you're a bunch of humans fighting all these really deadly creatures, and now it's scary, leaning more into the horror side. So I think it does play a factor, but there's also some things that like, there's a reason universalist systems exist. Bare bones mechanics can fit into a lot of different things, but I do think the best mechanics are ones that fuse that fantasy. One of the best mechanics of all time is the Dread Tower. Like let me tell you, when I'm like explaining, I'm like, you go through, You see someone look at you as they peek around the hall. Do you try to sneak past them? I try. Okay. Pull a block. I don't know if I want. I don't know. I don't know. Like I
They
literally
really
had.
reconsider.
I've had players stand up very cautiously, like, okay. And
That's
it's
so
like,
good.
yes. And I'm like,
So good.
I didn't have to do anything.
It's the whole like you need to design an idea as simple and perfect as the paperclip. Like can you design a game mechanic more perfectly married to the actual experience of the player than pulling from the Jenga tower
Right.
in like a tense horror game? Like I don't know.
10 Candles gets close. I mean, having the dice pool that you're all sharing and you're rolling, and it's like not too bad. And then as the story gets closer and closer to the inevitable death, you lose more and more of your resources. So you feel more and more like the inevitability is coming, literally burning your attributes because you're withering yourself away. That's pretty good.
Very thematic.
Yeah.
Very, very thematic. I admire those types of creative designs so much because like even if like you don't use something like that in your own game, it's so inspiring to see that level of creativity and see
Yeah.
those like weird connections where somebody was like, yeah, but what if Jenga also? And then you're
Right.
like, wait, but what if? And it's, yeah.
Well, and then what's fascinating too, and part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're going to have to eventually do a video on negative design space. But the fact that Mothership knew exactly what it wanted to do so well, where it's like stealthing is so important to our game that we're not giving you a stealth skill. You have to explain how you hide yourself because we want that tension in there. We want you to feel like your character who is hiding. Like it's not just I hide really well because that's what my role says. It's like no, you hide well because you chose the like proper spot to hide. That
Yeah.
stuff's great.
I think that's brilliant. And I think it also shows a great understanding of what's going to preserve the tension in that moment as well. Like if we're talking about the fantasy is like you are about to die horribly unless what do you do? And
Right.
if what you do is you look away from the other players and you pick up your dice and you look and you start doing that, like that you've kind of already lost at that point. But then on top of that, you look at your result. If you're doing it kind of this other way of like I roll my stealth skill,
Right.
and you instantly know success or failure before the thing has happened. I actually just watched a video about this earlier today. It was talking about exactly this. Like if you have something where the delay between success and failure being determined, but and actually trying to do the thing first is substantial, like you don't roll yet. Like don't, or maybe don't roll at all, but whatever it is, like you want to preserve the tension. So like, I think the classic example is like somebody, rogue rolls stealth trying to get into to try and sneak past the guards, and they roll like a 2 and they're like, I don't know if a 11 is going to be enough to do this. You have to try really hard not to metagame at that point,
Right.
and just like play honestly, like you committed to making that roll and to taking those actions, but you've rolled a little too early, and now you kind of know that it's not going to work out for you. I think there's a similar thing with like insight checks where there was a suggestion somewhere that was like, this may have been a Matt Colville. I forget who came up with this, but it was like having the GM roll the insight check, which, obviously you should agree to that in your session 0. Like, don't just spring that on your players. But I think that's really cool. I love that.
I have found that I tried to do that once, one campaign, and I don't know, my players just didn't enjoy it. I think because me telling them how their character should act felt worse than the dice doing it. Now, I really like we've got, because we played a lot of Daggerheart, that really forces that collaborative experience. I love when our players lean into that. So like we'll have one player roll instinct to see if they can see if that person's lying, and they'll get a really low score with fear, and they'll be like, yep, everything he says makes sense to me. They just lean into it, right? I always enjoy that aspect. To talk about a mechanic that's flavorful that isn't horror based, because people are going to probably just say that that's all it is. I do like hope and fear in Daggerheart because it takes 2 dice and it makes 5 different results from the rolling of 2 dice, which is fantastic. But from a literal like player analysis, if you roll with hope, you feel great because you gain a resource, and if you roll with fear, you feel terrible because the GM gains one, which like is super thematic in that regard. But that means that there's been a lot of players who were too scared to roll period because they thought the GM could get fear and it would be bad. Which I'm like, is that a win or a loss? I don't know. I think it's a win.
Maybe it chalks up to like they're just taking it more seriously than just like I do a thing and we'll see how it go. Like maybe that's a good thing. I did remember, I probably cut this from the video, but I forgot a thing and now I'm remembering it, and it's directly related to like, so hope and fear, Daggerheart, you have your 2 dice, they're going to generate one of those 2 resources most of the time. I a year ago wanted to do something similar for Blue Shiners, and I wanted the Meta-Currencies. One was going to be Defiance for the players because we have this kind of like underdog vibe, and so like you know you're kind of, and then Doom was the other side. The point was I was trying to figure out when these things generate, and like inside of a fight, inside of this sort of skirmish minigame, like that was fine. Like we had a way for that to work. Outside of a fight, when you're just adventuring and you're role playing and you're doing other things, like it's still, it's got to come up. It was not going to be as regular or consistent as the Daggerheart model, where it's like every roll. Right. And so the theme of Defiance made that so difficult because I was trying to keep it rooted in what the actual character is experiencing, right? Because like that's the classic disconnect with the Meta-Currency, is if it's not actually modeling something that you can point to in the fiction. So Defiance, what are you defiant of? Well, probably something bad happening that you have to kind of overcome anyway, or like, somebody's gonna like tell you like, you can't do that, stand in your way, whatever. Like there's an obstacle. And in role playing, that could be a lot of different things story wise, but mechanically speaking, maybe that's when you fail a roll. But and I ran this also ties into when you're talking about the specific players who just like, okay, let me just play as optimally as possible, even if it makes no sense. I ran this by a friend of mine who has never played a role-playing game, but has a great like gamer brain. I was like, can you break this? And they were like, well, of course I would just try and fail all my rolls. And I was like, oh God.
That's not a good sign.
I know that's a very bad. And so then I had to pick apart, like, because at that point you're kind of just not playing the game, but you are. Right. So like at what point do you draw a line? Like how do you design for players who are going to do something so against the like just the spirit of the game that it's almost like, why are you playing? Like, do you account for that? And eventually it got to a point where it bugged me, where I was like, this is hackable in a way that does not feel right. And so we moved away from that. It was like, that can't be the way that it works, because I don't want people like hoping that they fail a roll or somehow trying to throw it. I don't know that you even necessarily could, but yeah, like it just feels so counter to what the experience is meant to be.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Again, going back to having a co-designer is great, because you can have them again look at it for fresh eyes and be like, no, I'd always fail, obviously.
Poke holes in this, please.
I was thinking of making a change to the Daggerheart core mechanic. So as stated, Charles has not had a lot of time to work with me. So I'm like, I have these other design goals I'm going to start focusing on. And when you go to Gen Con and talk to one of the designers of Daggerheart and you start sharing some ideas and he's like, yeah, man, go for it. You're like, okay, I'm going to go for it a little bit.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So I was talking with Rob and I was like, I love Hope and Fear. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the players get to choose if they get hope or fear, but then it's more like yin and yang, where it's something that exists within everyone already. So whichever, it's not like you're trying to avoid one or the other per se, right? You're not like, I never want to roll with fear. Sometimes you want to roll with yang or yin, but maybe there's mechanics built around which resource you want more of. So like I have a yang build where it's like, if I have more yang than yin, I can do more damage or do something like that. And then if I have more yin, I can do this. If I'm balanced, I get to do extra stuff on top of that. To me, that was where like the more interesting aspect came in. But then to your point of designing, I'm like, because that's the flavor, I also know that that's where all the cognitive load needs to go. So I need to have the rest of the mechanics not be as confusing so that that result can happen. So that means I have to do a roll under system. So that way it's literally just on your page what's successful or not. And then you can roll your two d20s, one's a yin, one's a yang, and then you'll know immediately which was successful and which wasn't, if both were, if both weren't. And then you get to choose. Because I've played games before where they'll give you a special die and they're like, yeah, and then sometimes you might choose that special die instead of the other ones because it's special. And almost most of the time people are like, no, I just want to succeed. Right? Like Candela Obscura has that big issue where it's like you have the gilded die and it's like, what? Like, I know I get the thing back, but like, I'd rather just succeed than get the thing back.
That is such a like interesting design space to be in, where you're trying to make the player consider something counterintuitive for the sake of like an alternate, objective or set of mechanics. And like, how do you get people to value that?
Yeah. So to me, it's like if you make it a resource that they're like, well, I really need one more yang. Guys, I'm going to fail this roll. And then I started thinking about like, well, what if there's creatures and enemies that react in a specific way depending on which of the two dice you choose? So right now I'm going with, I don't want to do yin and yang per se. That's the idea. But right now I'm going with like calm and zeal until I can think of better words for it. But like,
those are cool.
One of my friends who's part of the board gaming design group, I was telling him about this stuff and he's like, you gotta make this and I'm gonna play it. I'm like, all right. So he was playtesting it a little bit with me where I'm like, you see this monster that's been ravishing part of your town. What do you do? And he's like, I approach. I'm like, cool. And he's like, oh, I'll do so with zeal. And I'm like, all right. You approach him and you notice it's eating something. And then as you like get closer and closer, you're doing so too aggressively or too passionately that it startles him and now he's restless and they attacked. It eventually got away. And I was like, yeah, if you approached it with calm, like I approach it calmly, even if you had failed, it would have noticed you, but like would have been like, oh, okay, this guy means no harm. I'm just going to keep eating my thing. So like having that also be something where it's like, there's a little bit of the puzzle of like, well, if we approach this barterer with calm, maybe he like doesn't care too much. And like, maybe I can succeed with calm and get what I want temporarily, but then the next person doesn't get to roll because he's like, you're a bunch of pushovers or whatever, or maybe vice versa, right? Maybe there is a barterer who wants to have zeal because he wants someone to like really go back and forth with, and he's like, I like you. You actually get a discount, right? That to me is more the design space I'm working with. We'll see if it works in play because that's always the big thing.
I think it's got promise for sure. Like I think it may come down to what level of transparency there is about like how this might flavor or shade the outcome. Right. Like if a player is making it for that purpose, they'll want to know, at least broadly speaking, like, right. and it'll be your job to communicate like it's not about bad or good. It's not about like better or worse. It's just different. And then depending on who it happens to, that'll change the outcome. Yeah.
And then that also made me determine like, so I'm only doing like 7 stats rather than any skills. So then that way, like if I approach with might, can I have a calm might? Yeah. You probably just like punch the guy one and like tell him to back off. Versus a zeal might be like a few punches, right? Stuff like, so it's like might, finesse, knowledge, wit, you got to include wit, charm, and spirit and luck. Cause I like luck.
Nice.
So
nice.
But yeah, I wanted it to be like all these different approaches that can work in either direction. But again,
I feel like the calm might attack is like Terry Crews flexes his muscles and you just go, okay, no, I'm out. Like you just run.
I think it's like a Bruce Lee moment where he beats one guy and it's like,
and just like looks at you.
I feel like Captain America has calm might in the like elevator scene. He's like, does anybody want to get out?
Yeah. Like, there could be some cool, like, if you lean into the switch between the two, like, especially if you're doing this duality thing, if everybody's got both, then kind of like, if you set yourself up in one way, you could then pay off that setup by switching at the right moment, at the right narrative beat that creates some kind of like, it could create a larger effect or larger impact. Like if you for instance, are like that scene really is a perfect moment of it because he's so calm and so still and so unassuming, and everyone walks into the elevator. They think that we've got numbers, we've got him handled. Yeah, he's Captain America, whatever. He knows this is going to go to my advantage, but I've got to start. Like
Right.
I've got to like take it to them. And so like that flip is where he
That's
gets
fair. Yeah.
kind of, I don't know. I think that could be an
Oh, I like
interesting.
that. That could be because I want to do Fabula Ultima's classes because I think that's the best way to do classes, in my opinion, of just like pick what you want and then you can also multi-class really easily and just like make your own unique thing. So I could
Mhm.
have easily like a class that's literally about like you swap what your two totals are for in this moment. Something like that could really work for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I'm hooked. That sounds
yeah.
fun to me.
And that's how you design with a partner.
Do you have any like quick
Mhm.
fire tips for aspiring designers or current designers?
Yeah.
People like I think mine that I would start with is if you were because I go through this, I'll get stuck. Like
Mhm.
I'll fall into a design pit and I'm just like I don't know what to do, where I'm going, how I want to take. I don't have I have feelings of dissatisfaction and I don't know how to like focus them into action and into what to do. And I find it incredibly helpful to have essentially like a design North Star
Mhm.
for your game. And, you know, like Draw Steel, I think is a classic sort of more public facing example of like heroic fantasy.
Cinematic.
Like they have their
Yeah.
cinematic, right? That was the third one. And so like they have their pillars basically. And the two that we've settled on are Scrappy and Cooperative.
Mhm.
As far as like Scrappy and Cooperative goes, though, like I think that it helps me continue to return to that and to
Mhm.
continue to check in with that. A, is that still the case? And B, wherever I'm at now, how do I sit with that if I'm worried about this new, you know, like
Right.
we're currently transitioning away from our previous health system into something new, but it's changing, you know, it's changing the
Yep.
game. I think it's better, but it's changing the game. And so
Right.
it's helpful to just check in and like, yes, this still lines up with that. Great. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I think for me, if I ever get stuck on something, it's the same as if like when you're trying to work out and you're like, I feel like I keep plateauing. It's like then do something else. Like work on something different because sometimes do like working it out in a different creative way. And I mean like not just like work on a different system for your game, like work on something completely different. Come up with a
Mhm.
card game that just requires a deck of 52 cards. Just literally start thinking of a different thing and you never will realize how easily that allows you to then start thinking in a different direction. There's a lot of new RPGs coming out now that are like taking things that have been in the board game space for years. You have 13 Omens from Paizo, where you're pulling dice out of a bag. And it's like, from an RPG perspective, you're like, that's so cool and innovative. And from a board game perspective, you're like, we've been doing that forever.
It's been here the whole time.
And so yeah, just like start working on other things. You'll be surprised what you get inspiration for. If you have a flavor, watch those kind of movies. Because like, let me tell you, I watched The Killer with Michael Fassbender, and I got an idea for an RPG, and then I made it, and it's available on the Patreon. So like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, free download for anyone. You don't have to be a member. You just join the Patreon. It's there. It's called Target Acquired. It's the idea of you're like a hitman. You have your mission, and then you're just like doing a thing. And if you're successful, you add that die to your pool, and then you attempt to make your attack, and then you're trying to get out of there. And then so you're like building a dice pool, and then once you have it, you do your thing, and then you start dwindling it down before you can get away.
Cool. Cool.
Which
I
was
like that.
yeah, because literally the opening of the first 45 minutes, which is the best part of the movie, don't watch anything else after that, is him getting ready for an assassination attempt. And you see him place things in the right spot, call people, like, or coordinate things. He takes the shot. He, spoiler alert, misses, and then he has to escape. And you like literally, he walks by like this bridge and finds a gun that he had placed there like 3 days ago, and
Mhm.
then he gets in this car that he already had ready for him. And I'm like, that's yep, I can make an RPG out of that. So
Cool. Yeah.
that'd be my advice if you ever get stuck. Just work on something else.
Yeah. I think I also like the idea of, and I think this goes especially for a lot of creative types that are very much in it for like the love of the game. Like you're designing because you love designing. You're making movies because you love making movies. Whatever. Don't be afraid of success, in the sense that you've got to share this at
Oh,
some
yes.
point. And like that is the step that takes it into like being more real. But like if other people, like the whole point of art is to be experienced by other people. I would posit. I think there are people who disagree with me philosophically, but they're wrong. So
What? Frank being a contrarian? Never.
no, what?
No, I think that is a fair point. I mean, if you're just doing it because it's a game your friends enjoy, cool, awesome. But you're still sharing it with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, yeah, get rid of that fear of failure. It can be tough, but like, you never know. And also, most of the time, people are actually more than willing to like try out a playtest thing, and then they're more than like half the time they're always like, "Oh, this was great, good job." Like, like they're just like, "Wow, you did a thing, awesome."
Yeah.
Like, let me tell you, when you go to Gen Con and the amount of other people who are shilling out Peter's game than he is, right? It's because they're like, well, one, they're friends, and they're like, we like you, and so we want to promote your thing, but also like they're happy that their friend made something cool, and so
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. It is. I think the only way that you complete a creative process is by giving it away and allowing other people to take it on and make it theirs. And part of that is they become fans, they become connected to you through your work, and they make it theirs, and they, you know, create their own stories in your world. The best, just as a side note related to that, for the first time, we had someone else, not me or Matt, running a playtest, like someone else completely. This was about a month ago.
good.
Yeah. Oh no, please definitely do that.
Yes.
And I got the feedback, and so this he ran it for teenagers at like a library kind of meetup, like TTRPG meetup, and they play a bunch of different games. But in my head, I'm like, oh God, like teenage boys, this is gonna. There, I wasn't there, so like this is, you know, and they had a blast. And the actual feedback, I was like reading through the actual adventure. It was not anything I had prepped. It was like this person like went and made their own thing, and the sheer like excitement and satisfaction of having someone else create their own story in my setting with my game, and then they all had fun, like that cannot be, it is an incomparable experience.
Right.
It is so rewarding. Like, get to that point and then don't stop, because it's so worth it.
I couldn't agree more. When you can inspire other people to do a thing, it's awesome.
So anyway, we've gone on more than long enough. There's more to talk about, I'm sure. We'll get to that at a different time. Go ahead and check out Frank and Charles over at What is Tabletop. They have a Patreon. They have all kinds of cool stuff cooking. They're working on multiple different games. Their videos are always incredible.
So many games.
So many games. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye. You don't have a sign off. Stay witty.
Yeah. Say, there you go. That's how we stay.